My guest today reframes something I think a lot of leaders get wrong, that asking for help is a weakness. Peter Sutton has been in the trenches of business, felt the pressure build, and made one of the bravest decisions a high performer can make. He stopped and he asked for help. Today's conversation touches on mental health, including the importance of asking for help. If anything discussed resonates with you personally, please speak with someone you trust. This is Through Your Lens. This is Peter Sutton. Sato, thanks for coming in.
Oh, mate, it's a pleasure. It's been really lovely to reconnect over the last few months again. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now we dive straight into the deep end.
Yep.
And I usually start my questions, my podcast with this question, which is, what was the most difficult moment of your life to date? And, can you look back now and go, you know what, there was some learnings there or there was a blessing there?
Absolutely. Probably a point that may differ from the narrative that everybody else has, but my greatest or most pivotal point was voluntarily deciding to go into a mental health unit for 3 to 4 weeks about 5 years ago, and walking back out. It's been the greatest achievement that I've ever done.
Describe to me the moments right before you entered that world. What was your world and life looking like?
I was a small business owner. You and I were in coaching together, which is how we met. And I had been gradually fraying at the sides, like many small business owners do. And I do it in a way where I will work and work till I make myself unhealthy. And I'd taken my son to the doctor for, I think it was just for common cold, clean up. And our doctor, who's been amazing, she said, okay, your son can go, but you need to stay. So she clearly saw something that I didn't see and that other people were seeing around me. And I was really sick. So I was mentally unwell. I was physically unwell. That sent off a chain of events in my life mid-COVID.
Do you think it was that obvious from the outside, or did that doctor who sort of made that call, was she just an amazing person who could just see beneath the layers of something?
Oh, look, she's an amazing person in her own right. I think my wife Natal could see some things, yet I think I'd covered that up as this is what small business people do, and they just drive through.
Yeah.
But for me, one of the big key things that I watch out now is sleep. I'd actually was on the verge of becoming catatonic because I hadn't slept for a period of time. And with that comes an edge and an agitation that you are naturally going to vibe off. And the doctor thankfully knew a little bit of my background, but was very clear and clinical on what she had to do. And God love her, I say, yeah.
What an amazing person.
Yeah.
What do you hope? I think what is amazing about you is that you can talk about it.
Yeah.
And share this. Clearly, a lot of the population is going through really similar places and spaces, but they probably are just driving through and don't want to talk about it, which is the problem. What do you hope to sort of share today and sort of impart on the people that might be struggling?
I think lived experience. I think there's a lot of data, there's a lot of research. We live in a very, data-rich world. And I think there's a little missing piece around personalised lived experience. And, I've got a lot of beautiful people around me, and yourself included, that have encouraged this message. So I think just letting people hear at least a story and how I built to that point, because there's a lot of things that led to that penultimate point. I think that would be the most important thing. And from that, hoping that there's a little piece that might connect with someone, and they can then either go and have a smaller conversation that then is something to expand and build on. whether that be a male or a significant other, a partner, a wife, a girlfriend, a boyfriend, whatever.
Nice. I love that. We'll go into what led up to this point.
Yeah.
We'll definitely dive into some of those moments throughout your life. But I guess from the outside looking in, what does it look like, and what is that experience like going into a ward? What is the correct term?
I would call it a mental health unit.
A mental health unit.
Yep.
So, I guess I feel like we're lucky here on the Sunshine Coast. We've got amazing facilities and places like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, what does it look like, and who can go? Can anyone go?
Look, I was really, really lucky. I had, again, my doctor was very significant in pulling together a team for me. And so I had a great psychiatrist that was attached to the Corinda mental health unit at Budrum Private. So I was lucky to be able to go into that unit. It's very much, I would describe it more like a hotel than and this is obviously a private unit again. So it's less hospitalised, more hotel-like, however, with hospital functionality. So you go in, do all the sign-in. Very lucky again. I had a private room. There was an outdoor area. And then physically it's, set around some fairly central communal spaces of eating, little breakout areas, gardens, exercise areas, and the like. And then obviously the people that are in there, we've all come with an individual backstory of what's brought us to there. But it's that experience, I think, is very different to, say, a public hospital. So I feel very privileged that I had that open and accessible to me. There's still some things around it where are a little confronting. So, your veranda area is obviously heavily gauzed. But again, all the facility and functionality was there. However, you were under, for good reason, very strict supervision as well.
You talk, obviously you don't have to reveal people, but when you've told me off camera about some of the people you have met in there, you do it with like such love, and like you've learned a lot off them. Who are some of the people and personalities that you met in there?
Yeah, you meet, I met, there was Army veterans, there was, artists, creatives, engineers, elite athletes, so the complete cross spectrum of people. And it's a little interesting because it's kind of like when you get a little settled, and obviously I was under medication, so I was a lot calmer.
Yeah.
But yeah, you obviously go and strike up a conversation, and it generally sits around, well, what are you in for type thing, or what brought you here?
Is it funny to ask that question? Or not really?
Look, when you get comfortable asking I would say there's a theme of black humor that's very, very important. It was very important to me that we could still laugh, and because humor is a really integral part of my life, has been. So depending on the type of person, if it was a bit blokey, then it got a bit gag-like, and however, it always had a strikingly serious undertone.
Yeah.
There was people in there. There was a beautiful ex-Olympic runner. She couldn't sleep. Older lady, in her 60s and 70s, had this amazing backstory, but couldn't sleep. And then you had other segments. There were young women that were obviously dealing with eating issues. There was where it gets a bit confronting. There's those that are more supervised because of threat of self-harm, and then there's kind of stodgy, stoic blokes, a little bit like I was, where it's like, ooh, what do we say and what brought us here?
Yeah.
There was people that had been in there several times. I had one lady, she was hilarious. She just said, "Oh, I haven't seen you around before." And I said, "Oh, what do you mean?" And she goes, "Well, I think her words were, I come in for a tune-up every year."
Right.
But amongst it all, there was a very stripped back humanness about everybody. So there was no pretense. It was human, stripped right back to their barest. Yeah. So you knew that vulnerability was was almost right there in front of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you see common threads? And I know you're not a clinical psychologist,
Yeah.
and it's important to note this, and I'll say this at the top of this podcast,
Yeah.
but this is all lived experience,
Yeah.
very much something you have gone to the core of within
Yeah.
yourself and
Yeah.
experienced.
Yeah.
But did you see common threads of where these, roadblocks and troubles have come up for people?
Yeah, I think again, they're very basic. They may live in upbringing.
Mm.
I saw people that were truly, honestly struggling, however, were wanting to do it differently.
Mm.
So there was never there was always this is what's happening. Yet hope was always front and center,
Yep.
and a lot of the times, but not openly spoken around.
Mm.
And I think, obviously, with some of the vets, there was a PTSD element.
Yep.
I'm assuming there was people like myself who had taken something to the extreme where it had either mentally incapacitated them or physically incapacitated them in some way where
Yep.
and by physically incapacitated I mean I went in there, it was such relief.
Yeah.
So I slept hours and hours and hours because of the relief.
Was there that you were allowed to stop? Was that the feeling?
One of the key decisions, I was given two options by the doctor. I actually had been on an older medication for a long time and I didn't realize, but it had stopped working.
Mm.
So I'd been struggling for quite a while on my own. And so I'd been given this choice to do it, just at home or to go into hospital, and it was COVID. So it was a very difficult time and uncertain time. And the challenge there was leaving my wife and my two boys who were teenagers at the time. And in the end, I came to the decision that I would go into hospital because if I got myself right, then the rest would flow out.
Mm.
So as difficult as the decision was to go in and leave Natal out and the boys and limited access, that was the choice. I'm not sure I answered your question there, but that was kind of the choice that I had. So therefore, you saw those people making similar choices and similar sacrifices.
Yep. You're all in it together to commit to being better, I guess, is what I'm hearing.
So I think that's the big theme. People, it doesn't matter what's going on, that it's amazing how human spirit lifts. And in that type of environment, people are genuinely there to help you take the next baby step.
Yep. What was it like relationship-wise with your family before and then after walking out of those doors?
I have two amazing sons. At that stage, they were mid to late teens. So they were, I would consider, great friends, really good accountability partners. They could stand their dad when he needed to be stood, if that makes sense. You call him on something.
Yeah.
And then I had Natal, who's this incredible, very humble, strikingly intelligent, loyal individual.
Yeah.
And I think being a small business owner and running my own business while she was still teaching, I think that had the whole element of running a business on my own had really put us under pressure.
Yeah.
And that took a while to repair. And I had to, once I'd got myself right, I had to proactively then go after, what do I need to repair? But in that crisis time, everybody had a role. So we were all very clear on what the roles were, for Natal, it was like, have a break from me. But, she continued to come in, and it was a heart-wrenching time when she left me there. I can still vividly watch her walking down the path, and I'm looking through the gauze at her, and she's looking back, and probably the most distressing moment of my life. But she had a role just to kind of maybe nurture herself a little bit. I was hoping that going into hospital would give her that break. The two boys were there as their key role was to check me on my human level, if they could see that I was in good humour, then they knew I was in a good space.
Yeah.
So
That's a great barometer for you.
Yeah,
Because you're always joking, you're always having a laugh. And
yeah. And the authenticity of that, was important. I was very lucky, to have that team. I had an amazing counsellor. Obviously, I had a psychiatrist at that point in time, which was critically important. My GP, and then I was allowed one mate to come in and visit. So they all had specific roles, and the goal was just to get me out of that crisis point.
Yep. Thank you so much for sharing that part. That's not an easy, thing to go back to, but you speak so freely and with humour, and that's really cool.
Well, they're all really special people and still are to this day.
Yeah. So take me back. Let's set some context around Peter Sutton. Who are you? Where did you come from?
Oh, mate.
Let's tell me about your childhood. What did it look like? Mum and dad, what was life like?
I had a blessed childhood. I'm the youngest of three boys, and my mum is a small business owner, entrepreneur, you would say. That was her background. And my dad was an educator. So they've both been incredibly influential in my life. So we're in New South Wales. We grew up in country New South Wales, Wagga Wagga, Griffith, a little bit later Newcastle, Bathurst, and we moved around as Dad went up the education scales. He became quite a prolific senior bureaucrat for New South Wales education. It was not unknown to scab a ride down to Sydney to go to a rock concert or see some mates, and he'd be having a chat with the education minister and you'd be sitting silently listening to what was going on, that type of thing. But it brought this beautiful childhood because Dad was principal for a long time, and we always lived next to schools, and they were like just this amazing, playground.
Yeah, right.
We had access to a lot of stuff.
After hours.
Riding bikes around it and, getting up to, a few nefarious activities here and there. But yeah, it was a beautiful lifestyle span in and around the Riverina.
Yep.
My two older brothers, they pursued other things. He's amazing. He's in finance, and the other's been in communications, journalism, government work. So I think they bred, it's 70s style upbringing, so it was very free. Mum and Dad would be down on the golf course, which was 500 metres away from the school and the residence, and we'd be, we'd have all the cricket gear out, we'd have a test pitch mowing, it's a really fun, lively lifestyle. They were incredibly active parents that gave us huge amounts of leeway, and we led beautiful lifestyles across those moves.
What would you say your parents' style of parenting was like?
Our dad was a disciplinarian, it's interesting being the son of a school principal, where there was always an expectation growing up that you had to do it better. Yep. And each of us as boys rebelled in different ways around that. Like, I remember my oldest brother, he ran a Melbourne Cup sweep in his dad's school while Dad was principal, so you can imagine how that went down.
A little gambling syndicate.
It was 1970s, but didn't go down so well. So he was quite a disciplinarian, but he had a very gentle interior, if that's how you could say that. But 1960s, 70s man. Mum was very strong in her own right. She worked with Dad for a while, ran a restaurant for a while, but they instilled some beautiful values in us, particularly around work ethic, around just taking people on how they present and then being curious and interested in who and what they were and how you might help benefit them.
Yep.
So it was a very civic, social orientation in terms of growing up. And, they didn't come from a lot. Mum was from Western Australia. Dad was son of a waterside worker. And, you got this really interesting mix that somehow has played out in my life.
So your dad, obviously, he was career-driven. He's a great leader, disciplinary. You mentioned to me in the past that you grew up in a housing commission.
Yeah.
This doesn't make sense to me. Like, this was earlier, or what's the
Yeah,
time?
so well, Dad got a teaching scholarship out of Western Sydney to go to Wagga. So he did teachers college there. 1960s, start. They didn't have a lot of money between them when they got married. They started in housing commission.
Yeah.
So we, the very early parts of our life were, what was later dubbed housos. So we grew up in housing commission.
Yep.
And as Dad progressed with his career, it opened things up. So, going from a small housing commission home to a principal's teaching residence, like that was like, man, this thing is a mansion.
Did you notice that? Were you aware of how old were you when you went?
I was probably 5, 6, 7, 8.
Yeah.
And then we moved to Griffith, and we got access to more.
Yeah. So as his career, you're like, oh, this is nice.
And I think there was in the 70s there, Whitlam did that big, he paid teachers enormous amounts of money. There was big pay rises. There was big. So, it was quite an affluent move for an educator to go through.
Yeah.
And, Mum was just dabbling in doing things on the side,
Yeah.
Most of all keeping a house together and doing a great job of that. So it was a very, very humble start for us. And I think we held on to that, and that's where that work ethic grew from that.
Yeah. You told me something earlier as well that I sort of I really want to do with my son in some way. And that is they grow up, your boys, my kids are growing up in a beautiful, very privileged area, as to be said, of the Sunshine Coast. It's gorgeous. Everything's here, facilities, beaches, etc. You said you took your boys back to that house, the very house where you grew up in.
Yeah.
What was that like for them?
It was interesting. We were down there. Jude had just finished his Kapuka training with the army, and we were, a lot of things going on. And I said, I don't care. They wanted to go to the pub and whatnot. I said, I don't care. Before we do anything, you got to go and see where you all started. Where we started from. So I took him back into a place called Turvey Park in Wagga, which is a traditional housing commission area. And they were, and I, parked the car and said, you've got to get out. And we had a walk around, and they were dumbstruck at not only, wow, this is where it started, where their grandparents started that they knew, but also that we started there. And it was quite sad, because I remember back then, even though it was housing commission, people had a lot of pride in their properties. They were always well mown and they were looked after. So it was really, really dilapidated. And, it was like there was some silence there. And once I'd heard the silence from them, it was like the message just landed, and it was like, righto, can you take us to the pub now? And I was like, yeah, here we go.
Had enough of that, Dad.
that was pretty much it. Yeah, message locked. Thanks, Dad, we're good to go. But I think that was really important for me, and the response we got was beautiful from it. Yeah.
So, you've followed your dad's footsteps into education.
I tried hard not to.
Did you really?
I did, yeah.
Why did you end up going down that path?
I remember it's the old story of, tell people they should go off and do something, and you'll rebel and go and do exactly the opposite. I had a lot of people saying you'd be an amazing primary teacher, and of course, we still cry out for male primary teachers. And I went off and had a crack at an economics degree, and I got pulled up pretty quickly in semester 1 with quantitative statistics.
These numbers aren't adding up, Peter Sutton.
So, I didn't last long, and took the rest of the year off, and then went back to become primary teacher and found what I love there.
So you did genuinely love it?
Yeah, look, the further I got into it, the more I loved it. Kids are entertainingly hilarious. They see things through a beautiful, simple prism of life that I think as you grow as an adult, you get lost. And I think there's some beauty in going back and seeing that, and you get to ride that journey with kids. It was amazing.
When you entered the education world, was there some level of pressure or expectation having your dad as such a senior leader in the education space?
Yeah, there was, which I would say I'd built up too much in my head.
So it wasn't from others, it was from you?
Well, it was both. You got reinforced from others. So this is kind of mid 80s, 90s when he was in charge of about 600, 700 schools, and he finished up being in charge of all primary schools in New South Wales. So he was quite senior. But at that stage, I went out into a school that he looked after. He oversaw. I was one of his 600 that he looked after. So there was always, oh, you're John Sutton's son. So that would occur throughout university. That would occur, when I did my pracs. And it became quite challenging sometimes because some people would actually treat me differently. Some people would make things easier, which I could recognise very quickly and say, I don't want that. Other people would, one experience where the person absolutely crucified me, and I was like, I don't want that either. Like, I just am who I am type thing. So there was always that reinforcement no matter where I went, and it became very burdensome as I got older. Yeah. And when we were teaching overseas, and he'd been diagnosed with cancer, and I was coming back quite a bit and talking with him, and I remember saying to him, "Oh, when I went overseas, why I went overseas?" He goes, "Yeah, just to get out from under my feet and go and be your own person."
Yeah.
But there was some beautiful upside to that too. I used to see him, quite regularly at conferences, and he'd be on doing big road trips way out west, Broken Hill, Walgett, all far corners of the state, and he'd drop in, and it was lovely.
Did he help shape the way you operate as a educator leader, or did he just leave you, go, you do it your way?
It was really interesting. I think as a son, there's a bit of you that, well, for me was that I wanted to emulate him. And the older I got, the more I had to recognise that I'm actually not him. I'm my own person. So I would say had a far more gentle, softer nature than his environment and what he came to be. But he was required to be very directive in his leadership, and that was still quite a thing. But he could also be very, very collaborative. So he could be a chameleon, but I always knew it was in the day when leaders still carried a fair bit of fear about them. So he had that expectation, which Natal felt when she
bring the ruler out,
type thing. Yeah, yeah. So, but that was how they were bred. And he was quite revered, but also very welcomed. And but yeah, we're so different in terms of how we would lead. But I think once I got out from underneath that, and as you get a bit older and mature, I felt that was Dad, but I still think about him all the time.
My wife's a teacher.
Yep.
I know you as a teacher, and got a little insight into what it's like. But can you speak to how hard it is for people, teachers, educators, principals, the stresses involved, the expectations? Like, how hard is it in the classrooms today or before?
Geez, I've been out for about 15 years, so I've taught across the spectrum from, really socially disadvantaged, Indigenous, low socioeconomic, through to private school, richest in the world. A classroom is such a fascinating microcosm, and I would say teaching is both art and science. I think there's a little sense that it's lost its artistry a little bit because it's, we want this outcome, we want this output, we want to make sure that we, as a nation, we score here, which are all very, very good things. However, I think the bucket on educators has been filled to a point where it's overflowing, and I would suggest they still need time and space and energy to come back to how do they maintain their craft, how do they maintain the science of it, how do they collectively work as a school. Because schools are fascinating organisations to be part of, and I was lucky enough to go back and work with them as an outsider. But yeah, it's a really, really challenging craft. I think there's been a drift of parenting to association to what schools should pick up, and maybe parents still need to be proactively owning, what they're living and breathing and bringing into the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a tough job.
I bet. Where, can you remember?
They deserve every holiday they get, by the way.
Let's just put that on the record.
Yeah, it's on the record.
They barely work. They got so much. No. I know. Was there a moment where it dawned on you in somewhere along your teaching journey where you're like, this is hard? Actually, physically, whether it's losing sleep or some sort of way it came up physically for you, where you're like, geez, this is tough.
I think probably around about the 20-year mark.
Yeah. Took a couple of decades, but it got you in the end.
Around about the 20-year mark. I think in the leadership roles I had in schools, that's a very, very tough role. It's not a role I could sustain. I felt it didn't fit. There's an enormous amount of juggling to do, whether it be school boards or education administrative, targets. And then you got community, and then you got children, you got students at the heart. So I think I found as I moved more into that leadership space, that was the challenge. And my leadership style was not directive enough to maintain that role. So I did a principalship for a very, very short time and went, no, that's not me.
Yeah, right.
Got
a little taste.
Yeah, it takes some really special people to do that. And I'm not sure they have the elevation that they should in the community. But yeah, I got to around about that 15, 20-year mark. I'd been in leadership roles since my second year of education. So I'd probably went a little too quick, too early. But, on the flip side of that took me all around the world.
Yeah.
That ability to do that very quickly.
You told me about a school in Dubai with no books. Can you tell me that's how you find yourself in a school with no books?
Well, this was early 90s before Dubai exploded. So it was still an outpost. And we were recruited as Australians to go and set up an Australian school in Dubai. We were a little naive. I'd say we were pretty naive. When actually it was an Arabic school being set up as part of the Arab education system, but they just wanted Australians to teach there.
Yeah.
And it was interesting, we rock up and they say, the school will be finished. It'll be beautifully resourced. And we came to day one and there was nothing in there.
Kids, but no resources.
Well, we were there a week before it opened to kids.
Okay.
I think there was still nothing there. We were trying to get stuff in. We had desks and chairs. The library didn't have any books, I think, for about 9 months.
Right.
So that was quite interesting.
Right.
So, doing the basics of delivering education from an Australian perspective was somewhat impossible. So
did you have to improvise?
Oh, we improvised enormously, mate. It was a lot of chalk and talk and or whiteboard and marker. And my wife was a design teacher, so she went out and befriended one of the major construction business owners, and they brought in offcuts and all sorts of stuff. But it was a really wild 2 years, and it wasn't really sustainable for us. So we kind of boxed that one up. That was a great life experience, but yeah, we'll leave it at that.
And you moved on to Hong Kong, another international experience.
Yeah.
But much more positive.
Yeah, we were very lucky. I had friends in Hong Kong, and they just said, come out. We went out and we actually door knocked for jobs. We actually rang up and said, we're in town looking for work.
Yeah.
People were gracious. They met us. We were there for 10 days and we both left with a job at the end of that 10 days.
Nice.
And it was a beautiful education experience. We both worked in different schools. And, our two boys were born there. So it was we were afforded a fairly, how would I say, like an affluent lifestyle. We had home help. We were still very active in our children's upbringings, but we had, flexibility to have a social life and to stay connected. And Natal and I share a story that I used to do the 10 o'clock feed with the boys, and quite often Friday afternoon I might have gone out and had a few drinks with some mates. I'd say, I'll be back in an hour and a half, go home, do the feed. I could pop back out again if I wanted to. And we could travel from
feeding
there,
someone with a bottle. You go get your bottle.
I'd go and have another bottle of a different kind. So we had this beautiful lifestyle, and then we got to see the world. So we traveled enormously, and we saw the beauty of the world. We saw the harshness of the world. Saw some significant events internationally happen. And our boys even though they came back when they were 5 and 8, have a sense of the world.
Mm.
It's a beautiful lifestyle, very lucky. Any teachers out there that want to know about Go International Teaching, go.
Epic. You talk about the challenges of teaching and, the high stress, and I'm sure all that comes with it. By this stage, you're right into your career. Is your dad still with you? Is that level of expectation and I have to be John Sutton there in some way, like hiding in the shadows somewhere? Or are you off and running by this stage?
By the time we'd gone overseas and we were in Hong Kong and we'd had our 2 boys, we were off and running very much on our own life.
And you're in another country.
Yeah, and international teaching was so vastly different to, all of my education here was New South Wales Department of Education, so it was all government.
Yeah.
So I had these 2 vastly different experiences. I think the thing that hung over a little bit, and I had a bit of a chip on my shoulder for a while, was that came from such humble roots, and I had to really work hard to just move through that little piece and go, because we were mixing with some incredibly affluent people, but you also saw some amazing, beautiful people that you didn't realize the extent of their wealth, but they were exceptionally humble people. And so a lot of what I'd kind of taken as an educator and what I'd taken growing up as a kid was actually being pushed, nudged, sandpapered, polished while we're living overseas. So I'd have conversations with Dad by that stage and Mum around, well, what does leading this look like? And, they would come and visit and they would just be, they'd be boggling at, what we were working in.
Yeah. What was that struggle between like the life you grew up in and mixing with this affluent world? Like, is it a belonging sort of, do I belong here? Or what questions were you asking?
There was definitely a belonging. And I think even right throughout what I've done now and since I've known you, I've always initially felt at home with those that have little. That's my people, and I can equalize very easily. And the tension there was, how do I do that with people who have come from affluence? And how do I just treat someone as they are and how they present and what do they need? And, when you're dealing with people's kids, you get the full spectrum of, beautiful. I loved that you were treated and elevated very differently overseas as an educator. You were in an Asian culture, particularly, you are almost like, number one in the community. So that was lovely, whereas that didn't really exist in Australia.
Yeah. Okay.
So there was always that little bit of tension and how that would play out when I came back.
So you're painting a very rosy picture of life overseas, abroad. It sounds like you can stand up on your own 2 feet. You're not under the expectation of a John Sutton in Australia. Why come back? Why change from that life in Hong Kong?
Yeah, it was a very difficult life to lead. We all had some major health issues. So Natal had glandular fever. I then had what I would say was my first crack at burnout, and it presented in glandular fever also. And then Cal, our eldest, had a lot of respiratory issues because Hong Kong's a really, really polluted place. And we had a beautiful pediatrician, Tibetan pediatrician, and he said to us, I think your time is done. And it was that simple. And we went and resigned and got ready to come home. And we thought that was going to be pretty easy to do, and it wasn't. It was really difficult to leave an international lifestyle and come back to an Australia that had changed in the 13 years that we left.
In what way?
Australia's a long way away geographically. We went back to Bathurst, which was my hometown. We had good education connections there. We thought we'd be able to pick up. We thought it'd be a good place for the boys to, get a real earthy taste of Australia. And look, in the end, it was like that. But for the first probably 12 to 14 months, we experienced what you'd call reverse culture shock. So it's like moving to another country, but you're moving back to your home country.
Yeah.
And we learned very quickly that you didn't talk much about your international experiences because people really didn't have an understanding, or
Sure.
there wasn't a commonality
Look
there.
at you sideways a bit. Like, what are
Pretty
you talking
much,
about?
and what we learned was we just go. It was amazing, but we love the blue sky that we see here. Like
Yeah.
it became very quickly.
Yeah.
So you had to work to overcome that, and we did. We had really good people around us.
Yep.
Met great people, and we got into really basic Aussie things again, and that was fantastic. In the background, I thought I could kick off my own business while Natal taught, and that was kind of where we went.
And so there seems to be a little bit of a reoccurring burnout, working hard sort of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like to me a bit of a blessing and a curse of being brought up with that hardworking values,
Yeah.
And that striving.
Yeah.
Like you start your own business, and that is a perfect breeding ground for that, isn't it?
Pretty much, yeah.
As you know, and I think we're quite similar in
Yeah,
that.
we
Like
are,
I've
yeah.
got this hardworking, striving thing that, I struggle to turn it off.
Yep.
As well. Like
Yep.
it's just there.
Yep.
So how did that show up in creating your own business?
Yeah, look, if someone was to ask me, how did you get to where we started the conversation,
Yeah.
I would say that the duality of that work ethic, it took me around the world and took me to some great places, but it actually took me there at a cost. And when I was running my own education consulting business, that idea of just drive through, keep going, push, started to present itself in physical ways. One way was I was suffering serious panic attacks when I left the UAE, but that wasn't a thing in the late 90s. I didn't know.
Right.
And I'd learned to manage them. And then when we got back to Bathurst and running my own business and spending a lot of time on my own, when I'm actually love being around people, right? So I was kind of like sabotaging myself in a lot of ways. They started to present again. However, they what my boys call pretend heart attacks. So
did you know what they were, or
not at the time? I didn't. I had a couple of times where one time I fell off the toilet and passed out and smashed my nose and face, and then about 2 months later, I got up in the middle of a cold Bathurst night, which is about -7, right, and came out to Natal, and I had I was doing a checklist in my head. I had all of the symptoms of, I thought I was having a heart attack, except the shoot down the shoulder, the pain down the arm. And then I tapped her and said, I think I'm having a heart attack. And then I basically passed out. And my eldest son, he's 6'4" and 100 kegs. He came flying in and saw me passed out, and he passed out. Poor old Natal was left there with two of us and on the ambulance. And I actually got, as emergency services do, they worked backwards from heart attack. So I got treated for one. And we went to the ER, and I was still being treated as a heart attack. And I was, they gave me the compressions on the bed, and I'd passed out and low heart rate. And they then gave me the all of the blood thinning drugs to do crisis work, so there's no clot, stroke, whatever, or worse. And I spent then the next 2 weeks in a cardiac unit with doctors kind of going, we can't work out. You got a really strong heart, but you got some markers that are way off the charts. Really lucky. Had a guy by the name of Dr. Harry Lowe, who's a leading heart specialist in Sydney. And the only inkling that I got in around how nervous and the role of anxiety played was he said to me, you have a very high performing nervous system, Peter. And I said to him joking, I said, mate, that's a gold medal I really don't want at this point in time, and he said, well, and anyway, they worked through it. But in the end, it was, nothing was found wrong with my heart. And we did a bit more time in Bathurst. We moved up here. I had another one. And funnily enough, my son caught me, physically caught me.
So rewinding back to the first one.
Yeah.
Must have been, it felt quite serious, right?
It was really serious, yeah. Yeah.
So what changed after that? Or was it just
Oh,
like get through
I went a
it?
lot slower, but we still didn't really understand what was actually happening. Like we thought it was something physiological,
Mm.
not an emotional, anxious
And on that,
angst response.
mental health has come a long way. Awareness around mental health,
Yeah.
probably. I don't know, not too long. I'll start again. Mental health and the awareness of mental health and emotions has come a long way. But at that time, did you know?
Look, I'd been on medication since Dubai.
Right.
So because Dubai finished in a bit of a crisis moment for me, I would say that would be burnout number one, and
Dubai burnout number one, Hong Kong burnout number two, Bathurst, it's come
burnout
back
number
again.
3. Yeah. And I would say, so I was on medication. We all thought it was going really, really well, but I'd become very good at masking, like carrying and masking. Everything you present as though everything is wonderful. I think men are pretty good at this, and some women are pretty good at it too.
Yeah.
But inside there's this internal conflict of I'm just hanging on.
Yeah.
And I don't think my medication, because I'd been on it for so long, its effectiveness had started to wane, and I didn't realise.
What's your feeling around antidepressant medication, and what's been your
It's really
feeling with it?
interesting. It's a fantastic question. I hear, because I have a lot of people come and talk to me when they're in crisis or just from a lived experience point of view. And I always ask, are you on medication? A lot of people will say no and refuse it. And I get that because I went through that stage, and I actually had a couple of goes of completely coming off it, and it was disastrous.
Right.
It was like, someone attached a tap to my backside and opened it at full and let my soul run out. It was that bad.
Right.
So I just came to the decision that I would be a lifer. And by that time, I've got 2 young kids and a family, and it's bigger than me. So I've got to really make sure, I do some things. So I gave up alcohol back then. I, was exercising. We had a little man cave, 3 or 4 mates. So I was doing everything I possibly could to hold it. But with the medication coming away with its effectiveness, it was really, really important to me. And I think I tried being off it. You got to come on and off that very carefully, that stuff.
Did you have moments when you were off it where you could?
Oh yeah, it was very, very edgy. Yeah. It was not, you're not a great person. I was not I shouldn't say you, I was not a great person. You become very anxious, and then that plays out with those around you, in your temperament is short. You just don't have the bandwidth to deal with just the basics of life, little things that happen. And, I over the years, when people have asked me about medication, I've just said, you go work it out with your doctor. I would like you to ask yourself the question, why would you not use something that can potentially give you a bigger bucket or bigger bandwidth for a while? And then that helps you make a better decision about what life is for you. People have got physical ailments. They've got, mine's just psychological.
Yeah.
It's mental. But that's the challenge. I'm a highly emotive guy, and I've had to work on managing that differently and better. And medicine is a really crucial part of that. However, it's done with GP. I've always had a counsellor. It's the best money. I could have gone and bought an extra couple of houses with it, but it's always been the best money I've ever spent.
Yeah. And how often have you been seeing?
During crisis times, it'd be once a week, and we'd be talking about the plan and what's been happening and where we're going to next. So, just shifting out. I go once a month now. And, I had a counsellor. I've had many, and I had a beautiful one first time around. She goes, just remember we're like shoes, and if we don't fit, go find another one.
Yeah.
So I've always found one that A, would listen, and B, that would hold me to account. So
Yeah.
they're the two criteria that
Yeah.
I must have.
Yeah.
Um,
I must say you are very good at hiding it.
oh,
Well, you were.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
probably past tense now. I think
yeah,
you speak so openly about
yeah,
it now.
yeah,
But when we first met, it was in the business school. When you started your
yeah,
new business, you started the business school. I didn't know what I was doing in business, so I joined the
yeah,
business school, and we met together. And
yeah,
there was a buddy system they have where
yeah,
we catch up and speak
yeah,
fortnightly about how we're going in business. But you know what? Like maybe it's just my vagueness and not being aware, but
no,
you always show up as a happy guy. Oh, geez, this is a
yeah,
bit stressful at the moment, but I can
yeah,
work it out.
yeah,
And you were
yeah.
excited. And so you were probably going through some stuff then, which, I would have
Oh,
just
yeah,
been unaware of.
yeah,
You didn't tell me. And then I remember one day you said to me, I checked myself into a mental health unit.
yeah,
I said, what does that mean?
yeah,
What is that?
yeah,
Why?
yeah,
What's going on, And I
yeah,
think since that day, what I've observed is that you're slowly revealing more of yourself and cracking, that open,
yeah.
which is amazing.
There's a lot of conditioning there.
Mm.
They say I had someone say to me, those most likely to rebel are the sons and daughters of principals, preachers and policemen.
You're in that category.
Yeah, so I think there was a bit of cracking around that to be done. And I'm a very diligent and I'm a high performing person. Someone described me one day as a Formula One car, but they said when the wheels come off, the wheels really come off.
Yeah.
Right? So it's more about how do I be more sustainable and sustainable in my relationships, and what are the boundaries? As I've gotten older, I've pulled the boundaries right back in, and there's a piece there. When you live outside of Australian culture, you actually can see the conditioning that you have had when you're living and working in another culture. So I remember when I was coming back to Australia, my greatest fear was how would I be an Australian male? And
what does that mean to you?
Well, that meant to me less blokiness, more honesty.
Sorry, back then?
Yeah, back then.
Yep.
And I think with what's happened now, and mental health has a very prolific, I suppose, narrative in media and all those sorts of things, which is wonderful. It's also very complex, though. It's complex as we are to the individual. My story is nobody else's story.
Yeah.
We might have some commonalities.
Yeah.
So I remember I had to really work hard. That was probably the biggest challenge I had, was how do I be a very gentle male in what still is, stoic mateship man narrative that is upheld in Australia sometimes. And that happens in workplaces. That happens in, friendship groups. That happens in, and kind of encouraging people just to talk a little bit more about that is really, really important to me. And so that's why I think this story is more about, it's not so much about me, it's about if I can pop it out there, how would it serve? Yeah.
I love that. The business school, the business coaching business we spoke about earlier, you end up working there. You went from the coach to a coach to becoming a coach for other businesses.
Yeah.
Like what did you find you were doing with other businesses? Like, did you sit into that psychologist role? Because I know I've actually had a psychotherapist / business coach. She's trained in both.
Yeah.
And it's a great mix for me.
Oh, yeah, an awesome mix.
I feel like every business needs that.
Yeah.
Did you feel like you became that person for other businesses?
It was really like it's been the greatest gift, that job. I can't, like, words will fall short on what a gift that job has been. And it's a gift because I've seen and worked with the full gamut of human behavior. And, small business people, they're like, I put them up with principles. They work so hard. Their ability to switch off is difficult. It's a real graft. It's real hard work. So initially, I'm a very easy person to talk to, and I'm a great listener. I don't know, Natal might differ on the listen a bit, but yeah.
You create a safe
You
space.
create a very
for
safe
people,
space. You know,
Yeah.
some people call that agency, or what. So people are very, and I hold trust as a really important value. And to be a really great coach, you actually have to gain trust.
Mm.
And so, being in that business coaching world, a lot of it really, the big breakthroughs that you get with people is the amount of times you see a breakthrough personally with someone, and it might be, I've got to let go of a story that, you know, for example, wealthy people are wankers. You got to let that story go, and they have a little breakthrough like that, and you'd be amazed that on the P&L, you then go and see, wow, like sales elevate and net profit elevates, and so you see this lovely. There's always a match, I believe, in a personal breakthrough, and you see the result on the P&L and the balance sheet and the cash summary.
Yeah.
So interesting in that business, we all had our preferences. So I'm not great on sales. I can do, foundational sales 101, but we had another guy who was amazing at sales, right? So he'd be the sales guy. I was the bloke who got those who were mentally struggling,
Emotional support.
emotional support guy. I was the bloke. I laugh and say that, there was a fair bit of marriage counselling going on in business coaching, because husband and wife, a lot of the times they've come out of school at year 10 maybe, and then they'll do a trade, and they're amazing tradesmen and women. And they're also a couple, and it's like they come with this weird mishmash of how they do business. And, so I'd spend a lot of time separating life and business, and really basic things of like, do you have a director's meeting? I go, no. And it's like, well, when are you talking about business? Oh, such and such has got this bad habit of doing it when my head hits the pillow. And it's like, well, you got to stop that. It's like, so I would get that, and the team issues, and so that was kind of my gig. So I fell.
People would have loved that.
Yeah, I fell a lot into that space, and I got a lot of. We got a lot of beautiful traction in that space. And then, I had people who, and all the coaches get this, but we had major health incidents. We had significant things that happened in business. Government policy had changed. Really life-changing events. So it's this beautiful ride that you go on. And I think where I got unstuck was I didn't give that enough space for myself.
What beliefs have you spoke about it in businesses, and we all have these beliefs that aren't true.
Yeah.
What have you had to let go of along the journey?
I think the final bit of the houso bit, like being a business coach, that I had to really get rid of that very quickly, because, some of the businesses that I was coaching, in the 50, there was, they were 50, 60, 70, 80 million in revenue, right? So you got to be very comfortable in saying to someone who's got an enormous, 300-400 team under them, and they're earning that amount of money, you got to really know yourself very well, really know what your constraints are and how they show up, because quite often they would show up in the people you were coaching, which would then kind of could send you off a bit iffy. So you had to be very centered.
Yeah.
So that would be the biggest one.
Yeah.
I think really understanding the common themes of people and their behaviors. Everybody's trying to do the best they can. Some people love making money, and that's okay. Some people want to make a difference first, and they don't have the money, and we've got to flip it and go, well, we want you to make some money before you go make the difference.
Yeah.
There are probably 3 or 4 of the big ones there. Some people are not meant for small business. We've coached people out of business. It's like, this is not for you, or this type of business isn't for you. So do you want to do it? Well, that's a really big question to ask. And
how do they take that?
Generally, if they have a level of, generally you'll have worked with them enough that you've got enough trust, and you can see that there's a shard of light coming through, and probably got your foot in the door, if I use that metaphor, and you're ready to open it up, and you can hear emotionally they're struggling. I've probably done a handful of those, not a lot, but
Yeah.
and they'll go, yep, I'm off to go and do a job, and that's okay too. So, but and some amazing stories that people have come back from where they've had businesses, they've been financially deemed to be insolvent. They've done what they've had to do. They've carried on, they've carried, the shame of that in a community, and they've come back and they've done it, and they've done it brilliantly. Like beautiful stories
Mm.
like that.
Mm.
So it's been a very, very enriching space to be in terms of human behavior. I love it. Like it's lit me up. You can probably you can probably sense the tone in my voice has changed.
You've got this beautiful, amazing, well-rounded career now of experiences, highs and lows, and working with business people.
Yeah.
And everything that comes with that. I know about that. Now you're going around again. I guess it doesn't feel like a business. It just feels like you're in the right place now. Can you tell me what you're doing now and what the perfect life,
Yeah,
if there is such a thing, looks like for you?
Yeah, look, I've there's probably a couple of elements where I still want to be very engaged with people, and the learning. Learning is one of my, it'd be my number one value to personally keep learning, and then the number followed very quickly behind that is how do I help others learn? And it's interesting, 4 burnouts across about 20 years. There's this thing knocking on my shoulder or in the back of my head going, I think there's something there that I would like to address, or I would like to just to communicate in a way that it's a real thing. And there are complexities in and around that. And I think some of the conversation narrative around that is very polarized at the moment. You can hear productivity on one hand and, a little bit of wokeism, or a little bit of, what does psychosocial health look like in workplaces? What does work under pressure look like? And so there's a space there around personal development, of how does someone's strengths shift over into becoming becoming a constraint. And if I took myself as an example, that strength of working hard has actually been a real, I've taken that to such a degree where it's caused me ill health. And I see a lot of other people do that. And I'm interested in what are the reasons as to why that happens. Is it productivity gone wrong? Could we look at organizational productivity differently? Could leaders look at it differently? What's the narrative? I think about my son who had an 18 centimeter spiral fracture from skiing. It's about 6 months for that was to fully repair. You look at a burnout and someone who's very proactive in getting their health back, like I go at it. I'm not saying everybody goes at it like I go at it, but that's about 6 months. So there's some perceptions around, well, what does that look like when you're going through it? There's a lot of shame. There's a lot of magnification of how I will be perceived, because you're not actually in a state of being able to think broadly and objectively about yourself, and you need people around you to go, you're here. Can I ask that you continue this bit but not continue that bit? So I'll give you a funny example. I love reading as part of recovery, and I'm fascinated by a little bit of philosophy, a little bit of religion, a little bit of self-help, a little bit of personal development, whatever. And I love a good old-fashioned secondhand bookstore. So I went into one in a recovery mode, and Natal was watching me day in, day out, just write on it, underline it, write on it, like I was studying for an exam. Anyway, I went, she said, you got to stop that. And I pushed back really hard, and that's because you go through a manic stage, or I went through a manic stage
doing
of
more,
when it actually, you got to let the cortisol run out of you, which takes about 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And then you actually hit the horrible bit where you have nothing.
Yeah.
So I would sleep 12 to 14 hours, get up and be a little manic, have to do something. you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And mine was reading and making notes and
Yeah.
trying to improve myself straight away. Anyway, I told my counsellor, and she just laughed at me. That has to stop right now. You're banned.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was like, I'll go and pick up a fiction book and read boring fiction. And,
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So
We can get caught up in the doing. Of just even in recovery or whatever it might be. I need to recover faster. I need to do more.
So the recovery is really interesting. And I think the last time I did it was the most cognizant time I've been, because I gave my doctor right of veto. So I go in every 3 months. I do a specific checkup with her. She gets quantitative result on it. She says, yep, you're good to keep going. No, you're out. So she's pulled the pin on me a few times, and the most recent one, she pulled the pin on me and said, you're out. And it was like, even then I didn't fully realise that I wasn't great. And she said, this is how this is going to play out. And she used my son's broken leg. She goes, it'll be 6 months. First 6 to 8 weeks, cortisol will leave your body.
Yeah.
And you'll sleep, but you'll be a little bit energized. Next 6 to 8 weeks, you'll have nothing. So you'll sleep and you have nothing. You get up and you don't function.
Right.
So I don't function. I can't think. I can't hold a conversation. I can't, 2 to 3 instructions given to me would be very hard to hold, let alone implement or do. And I'm talking basic household things. So this requires a lot of really careful communication between partner, and, quite often there's friction, and partners, they're going through the emotion of it too. They could be angry with you again because you got yourself into this space again, or, all those sorts of things. So all those emotions are very rife, and that's probably the most difficult bit. And then the final bit is I'm good to go. I'm going to go like I went again, when in actual fact I'm good to go. How do I reframe what life looks like?
Yep.
So reframing is what I'm currently doing now. It's like, I'm not sure what it's going to look like, but it'll be working with people. It might be doing some education design projects. It might be supporting some leaders in some way. It might be, speaking about just that lived experience. It's such a data-rich environment on this. I think it's also important that, it's not an easy thing to talk about. But, you've been great in kind of, just pulling me along, and I got other people around me that have been fantastic in that space as well. I think, we're in our personal lives, our 2 boys, we've got one overseas in Whistler, being a ski lift dude, living his best life as a snowboarder for his 3rd year running. And that's great. We love that. We've got another one in the Defence Force, and we love that. They're both different kids, they're doing their thing. We're empty nesters. So Natal and I go, oh, wow, what does life look like for us? Yeah. So we're in this beautiful space where it's around what's really good health look like. So I
How far have you come in that space with all these lived experiences?
Yeah.
How well do you know Peter Sutton now, and how to deal with the things that pop up?
I know the triggers very well. It's the action around triggers. I'll go and devise. I did it the other week with Natal. So whatever I do, I'm on a tight 4-day-a-week work. I cannot work 5 days a week again. And I must have a Friday, Saturday, Sunday consecutive off.
Yep.
I went out about 3 weeks ago and said to Natal, oh, this, and this has happened. I need to work Friday and do this. Like, I had the whole story ready. I would just roll it out at her.
Yeah.
And she looked at me and laughed back at me and said, you don't work Fridays.
Yeah.
That was it, right? And that's, oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So it's a very basic behaviour, and that might sound very simplistic.
She's the gatekeeper.
Yeah.
Can't get it past Natal.
No, so it's about having, good gatekeepers around you, and people that go, oh, you don't have enough energy to engage socially. What's the problem? So that bit goes in me. So it's about, doing some work, but having enough to be having good space left for energy socially. Whereas I thought hard work was drill yourself to the ground, go home, flop on the lounge, go to bed, do it again.
Mm.
And
What are your non-negotiables now to make sure you're supporting that with?
so not negotiables, physical exercise. I've always done that. So I loved ocean swimming, and I was a long distance runner. So my back cracker, God love him, he said to me in jest one day, mate, you got about 15 years of running left in you, go buy a pair of shoes. So I did. So he's nurtured me back into running, which I love again. Shorter work days, just being really, I run everything through Natal.
Is it still a challenge? It sounds like it's still a challenge.
Yeah,
for you
I'm not fully there yet. Like, it's not
Yeah.
fully reframed,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I'd be kidding you if I said, I'm all good,
Yes, yeah,
because I'll never be good. Like
Yeah.
work is drug-like.
yeah. yeah.
That's how I would look at it, right? That hard work
Would you
ethic.
say you're a workaholic?
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yep. So, and I can be the fast Ferrari, but, I prefer that no more wheels fly off.
Yeah.
And we just, get a bit more sustainable.
Yeah.
Maybe
It's a hard one to get off work, isn't it? Like workaholism compared to, let's say, alcohol. I mean, not saying that one's harder than the other, but like it's a physical thing with drugs or alcohol. Work's this grey area that can seep into your.
So slippery, mate.
It's slippery. It is. Yeah.
Connections, just basic connections with a bunch of mates once a week. We go swimming, have breakfast, talk rubbish. Presence and intention are two things that are stuck on the fridge. So I can have this ability where I'll drift off, but it'll drift off to work when it's be present and be intentional.
Yeah.
And just in little things. Not a very handy person, but I've found joy in painting.
Yeah.
So it's about how you bring some of that balance just back into what brings joy. I like painting because I see a finished thing. Whereas in business coaching or in people development or whatever it is, it's hard to sometimes see that prize.
After all these learnings and these life experiences, if you were to put it into a mission statement, how would it read?
I'm the dude that fills the gap. It's that simple. It's about, and I've done it all my life. It's like someone comes to me and they're at point A and they want to go to point B. And I feel in my flow, my zone, if you want to go, Indian religious, my dharma, I feel it when I'm part of that little gap of helping someone move from A to B. That's it. So, and it can be in any different, and I've done that in a classroom context. I've done that with educators. I've done that with, disenfranchised communities, low socioeconomic communities, high-end communities, schools, businesses. If I took it all, it boils down to someone comes to me and says, this is where I'm at. And all I do is ask some questions and I go, I think this is what lines up for you beautifully. And that's what helped you need to move to that next space. So I'm sure that will look out in some sort of advisory support. I've had lots of people kind of pop up here and there. There's a bit of education work has popped up. Lots of different people have popped up in lots of different ways. But that's it in its simplest form.
Yeah. All I can say is lucky people, whoever gets to connect with you. I was lucky enough to be your buddy and rub shoulders with you over the journey. And I think you've got a gift in connecting with people.
Yeah.
To
Thank you,
simplify it.
Yeah.
And I think your journey and your experiences have only added to your strength and your story and your humbleness in falling down and brushing yourself and getting back up. I think that's really special. So thank you so much, Pete, for coming in today and sharing that journey.
Oh, it's been a pleasure, Tommy, and the get back and dust off is always done with great people, and you've been one of those lovely people that's been around and played a little part in that dusting off. So thanks for having me, mate. It's been awesome.
I love to finish off my podcast with this question, and that is, where are you at most peace?
It's early morning, book, first cup of coffee, dog next to me, out on the patio, listening to what's happening in the rainforest around me, and then off to either swim or run in it.
Sounds amazing. Sounds dreamy.
Well, that's the sunny coast, mate.
And as long as that pen is tucked away and you're not making any notes, it sounds,
Not allowed to make notes, no.
Sounds brilliant. Thank you so much, Peter Sutton.
Been a pleasure, mate. Thanks, Tommy.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching the show. This podcast is truly a passion project for me and the small but awesome team behind the scenes. We pour our hearts into bringing you these honest and insightful conversations. But I can't tell you how much it helps when you hit that follow or subscribe button. The show gets bigger, which means we can expand the production and we can continue to bring in amazing guests from all walks of life. Please help us to do this thing that we love and hit that follow or subscribe button. We appreciate you being here. Thank you.